Hello and welcome to the Data Sync tutorial video. In this session, we will be introducing you how to synchronize your data between Maximo and ArcGIS. Well, let's start having a look at our Map Manager configuration. Note here that I'm using a web map in order to perform the synchronization. Feel free to use one, but know that the data sync process is supported in both scenarios. Well, first, here I have my layer and I have a link configured. It's really important to take a note of the GIS object name since we are going to use it later. And also take a note of the attributes you are using to link your Maximo records and the ArcGIS. Okay, these three JSON map names are used in the data sync process. Here I have configured all of the three, but you can choose to use only one if you want. I will show you how to configure them, but before, let's have a look at our external systems. It's really important to check if the ArcGIS is properly configured, enabled, and that the JMS queues are properly configured in your WebLogic server. Okay, now we can go to the JSON mapping application. Well, I recommend you to use something similar to your GIS object name here in case you mess around with names in the future. Let's choose an object structure. I'm gonna choose asset since I'm using the asset in the map manager for the link. I will configure first the inbound process, and here the most important thing is the URL. You can get this from the ArcGIS server. I recommend you to choose a query that brings you the one single feature. And when you place this query right here, you will see that the application loads the JSON structure. Okay, I will go back and find already created one because it will be simpler for you to understand. So here I have all my three JSON mapping records. I will start showing you first the inbound. So as I showed you, the URL brought me here all the JSON attributes that I have in my GIS layer. And if I go to property, you note here that I can map what are the features and what are the attributes. So in here, once I loaded the attributes in the property path, if I click here, you can see that Maximo loaded from the layer all the attributes that we can use. In these properties, we will configure which values the fields inside Maximo will receive. So in this case, for example, asset num will receive bg pointer string plus the OID, which will come from the ArcGIS layer, the current record being processed. And here I hard-coded the site ID. Also, really important here, the bg points. You should really pay attention on this, use the exact one. Plus this GIS, it's a required field for this task. And most important, here I'm configuring the link that I first used in the map manager. So my map manager already created a link between a serial num in Maximo site and object ID in ArcGIS site. Having this linked the same way will make sure that I don't mess around with the outbound process in the future. Well, I have now created the inbound process. Let's have a quick look at the other ones. I have the response. I configured this in the exactly way, just inserting a URL which will bring the JSON data. And here I can click properties, and you see that it's the opposite way. Here I have the MX creation state, which is a field in the ArcGIS site. I can show you. Oh, here it is. And it will receive the change by attribute that will come from Maximo. Well, the difference between the response and the outbound is that the response is performed right after the inbound process. So as soon as my feature is loaded in the inbound process, this field will be populated with this value coming from Maximo. Finally, let's have a look at the outbound configuration. So the same thing, I just added an URL and had structure loaded right here. And I'm just saying a different thing to Maximo. I'm saying that MX creation state will have the value of description from Maximo. It means that whenever I change the description value in my record, it will update this field in ArcGIS side. Let's now have a look at the most important part of the process, which is our cron task. First, let's look at this cron task. You need to have this active or our queue is going to work. So let's go to the ArcGIS data sync cron task. Okay, first thing, note that I didn't activate it here because I want to activate it after I show you so you see the process running. Okay, here I have the enterprise service name and the external system. Here it's really important to have this configured, the same name that you use it in the JSON map and also in your map manager. This is a processed flag. Let's take a look at it. It's saying that the MX range equals 2. MX range is an attribute that I have in my layer. So you can see here that I separated a query bringing me 10 different features. All of them have the MX range of 3. The processed flag means that right after my feature is loaded in Maximo, it will change to 2, so the cron task can know whatever feature was already loaded in Maximo side. So it also asks for a record identifier, which I put here OID. Split tag must be features, and most important, our URL. And in here, we're going to use a query that retrieves from the ArcGIS server all the features I would like to synchronize inside Maximo. Just a small change in here. I'm retrieving this query as an HTML. I'm gonna change it for JSON. Okay, here are my 9 fields. All of them have the MX range of 3, which I really hope my cron task will process and make it as 2. So let's just copy here. All right, so let's save here and let's activate our cron task. Let's save and let's reload the request. Remember that you can also change the schedule of this cron task to being run as soon as you want. So remember that this query is bringing values based on the MX range. So if the cron task runs well, I should update here and not see anymore all these features. So after the 15 seconds, which I configured my cron task to run, now I run this query again in the ArcGIS side and I don't see any field. So let's have a look at Maximo. Well, all my features should be loaded inside asset, and remember that I used something like BG point to run all of them. Oh, here they are. We have the features loaded from 1 to 9. Note that these other 2 ones were from previous tests that I was doing. Let's have a look now at this attribute. You can see here that I have the change by max int add ADM, and I have the response configured. If I look in the ArcGIS side, I should see this value populated there by my response process. So let's search for ID equals to 3, for example. And MX creation state, here we have the MX int ADM. Perfect. Now let's try our outbound process. If I change something in the description, it should be reflected in the GIS side. So let's use the same one I was seeing over there, the tree, type outbound testing, for example, and just save. Okay, we should really wait for a while. Okay, now I see that we refreshed our query and we have the outbound testing working properly. Well, that's all, guys. Feel free to contact LBS team for further doubts.